a series that examines the role of religion in society, from messianic returns to the emotive responses transmitted through our culture. Wade fearlessly addresses reality claims from all directions, objectively exploring their compatibility with Holy Scripture. Tonight's episode, Remedies from God's World, with Randy Pryor.
Franson, host of Created in the Image of God, the Role of Religion in Society. I'm here with a live airing of a pre-recorded segment with Randy Pryor. Randy Pryor is a veteran of working with relationships with the fairer sex, with our better halves. He and I have shared some interesting discussions in preparing for this show, and I'm very excited to have him here with me in the virtual studio. Randy is providing us remedies from God's Word for husbands seeking to repair a broken relationship. And I can speak from experience about trying in vain to fix it. One of the keynote scriptures that he refers to, Ephesians 5:25, as he shares, calls us to love our wives. So we'll welcome him now into the studio and get to know him as we launch this episode number 101, airing on June 4th, which is my daughter's birthday, by the way. Welcome to the studio, Randy.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
So what we like to do in this first segment is dig into your own creation story. You know, created in the image of God refers back to the Garden of Eden and our creation as a species, male and female, by the way. But we always like to get to know a person by figuring out what are those pre-awareness experiences? Who were your parents? Where did they come from? What were the events surrounding your origin story that helped make you? What radioactive spider bit you in your pre-adolescent years?
Great question. My folks were divorced when I was 3 years old. So I was raised by my mom and grew up learning that money was number one. That was top priority. Make the money, because then you have options. And that's what I learned pretty well. And I took that, unfortunately, into my marriage and didn't understand why that wasn't working. Why, if I could provide everything, because that's what the world teaches us. If you want to be a good husband, then you need to become a good provider. And unfortunately, that's kind of all the world teaches us. So us men are good at that.
Yeah, let me unpack that a little bit. So your parents divorced. Were you living with mom then?
Yes.
From about the age of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so money was a huge challenge, no doubt. And did you sort of adopt then more the male role of provider, but from a perhaps weakened starting point?
Not exactly. I was a little kid at the time, so I just learned, that my mom is in charge and she's going to work at least 1 or 2 jobs all the time. And okay, this is how the world works. And I saw my dad like every other weekend. I didn't really know that that was odd. There were so many kids growing up that had divorced parents that, okay, this is how we do. And I didn't realize that I was learning certain things like, make money the most important thing, that kind of stuff growing up.
Right.
And, that was tough.
So what I'm getting at, though, is, the role of breadwinner has typically been a male role throughout human history, all the way back to the Garden of Eden. And your family was financially challenged. My question was really more, do you think that subconsciously, even as a very, very young boy, you began to feel the need to apply your testosterone to fix the situation and be the hero and help resolve the situation? And I mean all of that positively, but yet it's a challenging situation from a point of weakness where you don't have that father figure living with you. And all the statistics show that single family homes don't deliver the same privilege to
Absolutely.
those who have both parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely on my shoulders to go out and make the money. And if you made money and was able to, buy all the stuff, then that meant that you were a success. And anything other than that, and you weren't successful at all. So you have to go out and make the money. So yeah, absolutely. I learned that really well. And that's, I guess, like you say, from a very young age, I knew that my role was to make money and provide
Right.
for everybody.
Because it was a weakness, it was a flaw in the overall reality of your childhood that perhaps overshadowed a more balanced approach that would have led to a healthier overall situation and relationships. Is
Absolutely.
that fair?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as long as I brought the money in, then things would be fine.
Yeah. So I think going back to my own story, I've reflected on this many times that, my father was from Sweden, and that North European mentality was very much, as long as the husband brought home the money, that's all his responsibility ended. And then the woman had to sort of take care of everything else,
Right.
for better or worse.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
it was a model that kind of worked sort of for many people for many, millennia.
Right. Yeah. It kind of worked for me until it stopped, until it didn't. I was basically I was an entertainer for 40 years. I was a comedy magician and juggler. And my grandfather, who I never met, he passed away before I was born. My mom's father was an entertainer. So when I chose, or when the profession chose me, she was on board. She loved it, that I was, entertainer and making people laugh. And that was going to be great. And I did that for a very long time. And that was a
But
lot of fun.
I'm sure that with that kind of a career, there's a lot of hustle involved. There's a lot of periodic uncertainty, ups and downs,
Mhm.
lean years and fat years that put stresses and strains over time.
Yeah, and I poured myself into it, and I was fortunate to have a really good career, and we had a lot of fun. About halfway through my cruising career, I worked on cruise ships for about 7 years, and about 3.5 years into it, I married my wife and brought her on board, and she was part of the act, and we had a great time. And then we decided, it's time to have a family, so we got off the ships.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a whole different life when we said, okay, well, I've got to still bring home the bacon. I got to make the money. So I've got to really hustle because it's different. We got used to the cruise ship life, and it was very lucrative and it was fun and all that kind of stuff. But when I got home, I found 3 different local places, theaters that I could perform. And that was all. I was doing well for quite some time until 2 of the 3 of them closed within 60 days of each other.
Wow.
And I panicked, and I poured into it, and I worked and I worked. And I thought, well, of course she understands.
Right.
We've got, that was about that time we had our second child. So now I'm doing nothing but just making money, just working really hard. And yet she asked me many times, hey, I need more help with the kids. Hey, we need you to be around more. It's not just about the money. She told me many times, and I heard, go make the money and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
That's what I heard. And it wasn't. And she finally
Yeah.
said, look, I can't do it anymore. I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce. And that
Yeah.
rocked my world.
Well, I want to get to that, but I want to go back one more time, just by way of getting into this topic. Did you ever study Jung, the protege of Freud, and his psychology and his efforts?
Nope.
So the reason I bring it up is one of the things that Jung talked about in particular. Well, Freud, I think, talked about this, but was kind of like a money fixation. And apparently Jung himself had this, where he grew up in circumstances where he was always aspiring and wanting to be at the next level up in society. I mean, he was obviously doing pretty well in Vienna there, where with Freud. But he wasn't quite there, and so he recognized in himself sort of this psychological money fixation, and that really got me thinking about these areas of weakness, or maybe even darkness, that are kind of like a demon. And I don't mean to go into demonology at all, but figurative speaking, they're like a demon. They're like something that's haunting you, something that's oppressing you, something that's causing you to make bad decisions on a daily basis in how you treat other people in your micro relationships because of the focus. I mean, was there some of that going on? Maybe again, going back to that childhood experience with a single parent and a mother who, for her, that was existential, and that seemed then therefore to be everything. But for your wife, it kind of wasn't.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was definitely focused on money just because she had the kids and it was my job. Like you said, I learned it from a very young age. It definitely was my job to bring home the bacon and get the money and do whatever it takes, or I'd be a failure. Right. It was definitely black and white for me. It was, well, somebody has to do it, and she's not bringing in money, so I have to be the one to bring it in. And I just focused on that. It did feel like, well, there's a lot of pressure on that. I don't know if it felt like a demon, but it certainly did feel like this is it. This is my only choice.
Yeah, I mean, another way to put it would be a false god. I don't know what's worse, a demon or a false god, right?
Yeah.
But figuratively speaking, I'm not talking, really spiritually in that sense, but obviously there's spiritual overtones. So, I just find this kind of deep psychological reflection fascinating, because I've had to sort of go through my own self-therapy through my own crazy turmoil upbringing. But share with us then, what you were feeling at the time as this was falling apart, and as you were maybe belatedly realizing, oh, it really is over. And how long did it take you to keep sort of banging your head against a wall after it was too late? Share with us those experiences, if you don't mind going deep into the personal side of it.
Sure, absolutely. I use the phrase that I hear constantly with all of my guys. Well, I knew it was bad, but I didn't think it was that bad. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I thought that we were doing okay. I knew that, she wasn't getting everything she needed from home, but I didn't think it was divorce worthy. I didn't think it was nearly that bad. So when she said, it's not working for me, I'm out. All I could do is plead and try to convince her that she's wrong and I'm right, and she shouldn't do what she wants, and this is going to hurt the family and all that kind of stuff. And being an entertainer, all I could think of was, well, I've got to do something more, and entertainment on land now is really difficult. So I'll pour myself into getting some work on land that's maybe not entertainment, right? Online marketing. And I dove into that and I poured myself into it. And she wasn't having it. She couldn't see my vision of, hey, well, it's going to work and we're going to make a bunch of money. And she wasn't seeing it at all. So she finally pulled the plug, and I had no idea. I found out what codependence was all about. I finally understood that, because I was certainly codependent on her without even realizing it.
Right. Yeah. So what would you have done if somebody had said, here's this Herculean quest, just do this and your marriage will be saved? How far would you have gone if there had been a silver bullet, and the cost of that bullet? What would you have done to have salvaged the relationship at that time?
Sure, that's a great question. The reality is, all you need is a Wayback Machine. So you go back in time, right? And there's very few of us that could do that.
Well, but then you would need to know what it, because every good sci-fi, where people go back in time and try to fix it, right? They make it worse. Right. So you would really have to know. But this is an excellent point, because I can pinpoint the kinds of things that I did early in my relationship. Mm-hmm. And I believe, had I not done those things, it would have been a completely different story. What were some of those things for you, with the insight that you have? To use your Wayback Machine and actually go back and fix time, and not change the whole world for the worse.
Right. Absolutely. And matter of fact, this is such a great question. I wrote 12 articles about it.
Wow.
They're called Randy to Randy. What would I tell myself if I go back in time and slap myself up against the head and go, hey, listen, this is what's going to happen if you don't change. So the answer to the question is, make your marriage a top priority, not a pretty good, okay, well,
define marriage now, because for you, earning money was your marriage.
Right.
So clarify that for us. When you say marriage, it doesn't mean go do this online marketing thing.
Right. It's not about of course you gotta make money. Of course you gotta provide for the family, but that's only one little aspect. There are so many more things. If you want to bring it all down to a quick little phrase, it's put more time into your relationship. It's not about just providing for the family. You have to connect with your wife. and find out about her and her needs and listen to her. I can't tell you how many times my wife asked for my personal input on the family over 14 years. And she would say, hey, we need you. Hey, I need you. Hey, we need this or we need that. Okay. And I would be a good boy for a good 3 weeks, right? I would do whatever she needed just to pacify it and go, okay, that's fine. And after about 3 weeks, it'd slide right back into the way it used to be.
But you didn't maybe believe that her view of what was needed was the actual correct medicine, perhaps.
No, not at all. I thought she was fine. And that was a way of life where she would complain about something or let me know that she needed more of my personal time. And I'll give you a quick example because I didn't understand this at the time at all. She would say, okay, I would like you to do the dishes. What I heard was I would like the dishes done.
Right.
So I would work harder so that we could afford some help. And
Yeah.
I'd hire somebody to come in for 2 or 3 days a week. So that way, in my logical brain, the dishes were getting done and we could then go out to a movie together and spend time together. So that's the right thing to do, right?
Right.
And of course, the answer for her was, that's not what I said. I said, I would like you to do the dishes.
Right.
I didn't understand anything about love languages. I didn't know the first thing about that because I was selfish and a workaholic and a bit of a control freak. And I didn't even know it. So it made no sense to me for me to do the dishes when I could simply hire somebody else to do them. And then we'd have some time to be together. So I was doing life my way,
Right.
not listening to her.
Well, I think that's a great point to go to our first commercial break, which is now I'm going to use the way forward machine, predicting that we're going to get the video done for your book. What is the title of the book that you have out there?
It's called S.O.S. Reconnect.
S.O.S. Reconnect. And our producer and marketing director are working on a video that we're confident will get done in time to air on the June 4th show when this is going to be aired. And we got enough time to make that happen. So don't go anywhere. We're going to run that commercial, that video trailer. It's very short, about Randy's book, to encourage our audience members, even though it's not technically live, I'll interact with you at the end, and we'll make sure that we're giving away a copy of his book to those of you who are engaged in the audience. When we come back, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into his book. We're going to connect it to the Holy Writings. We're going to explore some solutions and remedies that you won't want to miss. And whether you're the fairer member of the species or the clunky male version represented here by Randy and I, you're going to find something of use to read, share, practice in making your relationship work. We'll be right back.
Once shared. When communication was easy and your bond was unbreakable. In the S.O.S. Reconnect, discover a faith-based framework that guides you to heal and communicate again. Find blueprints for conversations that can reopen communication. Page 170 holds the keys to dialogue that can bring you back together. Before reopening communication, understand how you got here. Ask yourself, how is this part of God's plan for me? God allowed this challenge for a reason. Discover how your relationship fits into His plan. The only path forward is through Him. Get your copy of the S.O.S. Reconnect today for just $4.99. Begin to heal and start communicating again. Order now at sosreconnect.com.
This is Wade Franson for the June 4th airing of Created in the Image of God, episode 101, with Randy Pryor, who is here teaching us male of the species people who sometimes have challenges in making relationships work. So welcome back, Randy.
Thank you.
Right before the break, and by the way, we're going to get a copy of that book we just saw the video of, presumably, if the future was predicted correctly. So that all the audience members who participate will have access to hopefully get a copy of that book, at least one of you. In that book, I'm sure you have many remedies and solutions, but I want to dig back just a little bit into what we were talking about, the early years of your life and correlate that to what you shared about how your wife asked you specifically to help with the dishes. Your solution was to go out and earn more money and hire some help, and that didn't do it for her. What led to that sort of echo chamber disconnect where you in your own mind thought, this is what she really needs? Or, you know, she's asking me for what she wants, but I'll give her what she really needs, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, it's very simple. I didn't want to do the dishes. So I don't like
Why didn't you want to do the dishes?
I don't know. It's one of those things. I don't like dishes. I don't like laundry. And if I could do pretty much anything else, I'd rather. So it was a good example of why our marriage didn't work. She would ask very plainly for what she wanted, and I figured out a way to do it my way.
Do you think that there was a perceived arrogance, perhaps a real arrogance in your response to that? Like, dishes are beneath me, laundry's beneath me. What does that say about her?
Well, maybe there might be some of it there, but yeah, it probably closer to I don't know if it's beneath me, but I just don't need to. I don't like it, so there must be a reason for it. And my logical solution would not only take care of the dishes, but it would also give us some time together, which is what I assumed that she wanted.
So were you able to get help in the household for her?
Yeah,
for a while?
sure.
And how
Yeah.
did that work out? Did she like that? Did she resent it as being more trouble than it's worth? How did that play out, practically speaking?
Yeah. It didn't play out very well at all, because every time we had help over, all she could think of is, you're spending money you don't have to.
Yeah.
Right? Why don't you just do the dishes, you dork?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, to summarize it, you weren't really respecting her view, her perspective, her opinions, and
Mm-mm.
so let's get into then scripture a little bit. Were there some perhaps misunderstanding of scripture? I mean, typically you've got this historical husband is the head of the wife kind of perspective. Was there some of that going on where you knew better and you were going to make the decisions and her input wasn't really valuable?
Not at that time. It wasn't scriptural at that time at all. I called myself a Christian because I liked the church I was going to whenever she made me go. But it wasn't me leading the family. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't understand why I was supposed to be the spiritual leader of the household. I didn't understand any of that. I
Okay.
was, an attender at church. So it just felt like it was a better logical solution to me than actually me getting my hands wet and doing dishes.
So was the timing of all this part of the reason why you got deeper into the church, into scripture, into a connection, a relationship with God?
Absolutely. Yeah. When she said, I don't love you anymore, I want a divorce, my world imploded. I had no idea what to do. I really didn't. So the only thing I could think of, I grabbed my dad's old King James Bible, and I'd never grabbed it before, and it was huge. And I opened it up and started to read the these and thous and confused the heck out of me. I didn't know anything about that. So I went to my church, and fortunately, I just talked to one of the pastors there, and he said, yeah, there's a group here that you might want to look into. And there was a support group at my church for separated guys. So I dove in and I learned all kinds of things that I should have been doing for the past 14 years with my wife. And although it seemed pretty obvious that my marriage was over, I had to fix it. I had to say, okay, what's the deal with this? And the more I learned about it, the more, I mean, first thing I did was gave my life to Christ. Said, okay, I was a 50-year-old boy at the time, doing life my way, pounding my high chair. Okay. It was time to change. It was time. And God said, oh, good. Okay. Now let's talk. And he said, oh, okay, I want you to learn some things. So I did. I dove in. I learned everything I could. And 6 months later, they asked me to become a leader. And that was 14 years ago. And I'm still doing it.
Wonderful. So going back 14 years ago, what were some of the things that you began to discover in those initial forays into the Word of God and discussions with other men in similar circumstances or learning similar things?
Yeah, great question. We are, for us males, God made us different. I know we all know this, right? Men and women are different. They have the emotions and the nurturing and the intuition, great stuff, but that's not how he made us. He gave us the logic and the need to fix things. It's in our DNA. Again, no mistakes, but we're using this life on this broken planet to understand that, to develop our character, because he's not really concerned about our comfort. He's really concerned about our character. So I had to learn these things. We think as logical men, we think, well, if something's broken, let's fix it. It's very logical for us. But it works everywhere else. It works in business, it works in our job, employment, although, okay, something's broken, let's fix it. Good. That's not how it works in a marriage. Because if you're married to a female, it's not a two-step process for them. Something's broken, let's reconnect first. And if we reconnect, then we'll fix it or work on it or repair it. Okay. It's that second section, that reconnection.
So are you saying that if something's broken, let's find out if it's worth fixing?
No, I'm saying if something's broken, connect with your wife. Talk to her.
No, I'm saying from her perspective, right? This is broken. Let's reconnect and find out if it's worth fixing, or if we agree on how to fix it, or what?
Yeah, it's always worth it. Yeah, it's always worth fixing.
No, I get that. What I'm getting at is that, what is really the essential difference there? Because in that sense, the woman would want to fix it too, right? And in a relationship, she might be the first one to figure out that it's broken.
Right. But the guys assume that once you work on the issues, then that's going to fix it. And the wives are generally not interested in the issues. There's the issue, what it seems like, do the dishes or whatever, but there's an underlying issue.
Okay. So in other words, a better analogy might be, the man wants to solve the symptom, right? Let's
Right.
take a pill to address the symptom.
Right.
And she's like, no, there's a deeper issue here.
Right. As in, okay, I'm thinking it's about the dishes. It's not about the dishes.
Yeah.
If a wife gets upset at her husband and she blows up and says, "You never take out the trash," I can promise you it's not about the trash.
Yeah.
There's something, much deeper than that. And that just, came to the surface and blew up or something, like the dishes. Nope. There's much more going on. Like, I'm not listening to, she doesn't feel heard. She doesn't feel listened to. She's not getting what she needs at home. And those are the things that I can help guys with, that I've learned all about. That's completely different than what we're thinking.
Yeah. Well, let's spend a minute on these differences. And I want to specifically address these from a religious perspective, because I'm a Baha'i. We also stream on something called the Clearwater Baha'i channel, and thank you to them for sponsoring part of the show. And we stream on a bunch of different, Christian channels and other channels as well. But in the Baha'i faith, the equality of the sexes is really important. The inequality of men and women across the planet, and there are still many nations today where women are definitely an inferior species, where they don't have the same legal rights, where they are really treated as second-class citizens. Maybe less of an issue today in the Western world, but when you start talking about differences, people often will interpret that as superiority, inferior, one being better. But I don't think that's what you're referring to at all.
No, not at all.
Right.
No.
So unpack that for us a little bit, these differences and how they might be complementary rather than a matter of equality or superior or inferior.
Right. We need them both. We need the logic. We need the emotions. But this broken world teaches guys that emotions are bad, that we should do it on our own. And specifically, if you reach out for help, then you're weak, and that we shouldn't, right? Never ask for help in this area. I don't know why it's specifically about relationships, but it is. And women have no problem reaching out for help.
Well, relationships are much more complex, right? Than some of the other, even, putting a man on the moon, might be easier than fixing your relationship for some people.
Sure. We have a way that we see the shortest distance between 2 points, right? Straight line. Let's get this fixed.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then we can move on with the rest of life, because we have so much stuff we have to do.
Right.
But Ephesians 5:25 doesn't say, husbands, make your wives happy. That's not what it says. It says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And that's different. It feels like maybe that's a nuance, but it's not. Making her happy is not in our control. Loving her is in our control. And a lot of guys will say, well, how do I do that? How do I just love her better? You mean it's not just providing for the family? I mean, I go to all the games, I do all the stuff. Okay, that's a checklist. I do all the stuff, right? You check it off. That's not what she wants.
Yeah. When does take up your cross and follow me end or stop, right?
Yeah. It doesn't.
Right. So loving the woman in your life the way that Christ loved the church, there's no end of well I've done. There's no time where you say I've done enough. I've done this, and I'm done. There's that old Steve Martin skit. You'll know that as a comedian. I give and I give and I give, and he's really funny when he says that. I can't even remember how it goes, but there's this funny skit about him complaining about how much he's giving. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It never stops. You don't ever get to say I've had enough of giving.
No, it doesn't stop. In fact, what I help my guys with is simplify it to this. If you had a giant poster, or you could paint it on your wall, it's this important. Giant letters. All it has to say is this: if it's important to you, it's important to me. Now, as a Christian, that's got two different meanings. If it's important to my wife, it's important to me. And if it's important to God, it's important to me. And the moment that you start to live that, and she can experience that, and if she believes that, she's not going anywhere. Why would she? If it's important to you, it's important to me. And that's kind of the opposite of how I used to live.
So how do we as individuals, or how do you help people who may be confused about what's important to God? Let's take the issue of money. I could bring up similar issues from my own life, but I don't want to talk about myself. I'm not afraid to talk about myself, but this show is about you and your message. So we'll talk about your example. When you were focused on earning money, you thought, and you mentioned, okay, you weren't really focused on God, but still you thought that was the right thing to do. You would have thought God would be pleased that you're providing for your family. So how does one discern what's really important to God when the relationship is struggling and failing, and let's say it was a pastor who's failing to love his wife because of his service to God and service to the church? I'm sure that comes up in some of your discussions with the men's group or whatever that you're leading.
Absolutely. Most of the time, not loving her looks like choosing something else, working too hard, really anything. I mean, you can put a hobby above your marriage. You can put all kinds of stuff above your marriage. We all have the same amount of time, right? 24 hours in a day. We all have that. So it's really based on our choices. Do we choose to connect with her? Because it's also not just about communication. It's about connection. Do you connect with her and find out where she's coming from, how she's feeling? Do you put her first? The way I look at it is we put Christ at the center of our lives, and then we put each other first. But as men, we need to lead by example, right? So it's not about, I'm going to do this because I feel this is right. Well, if you're married, it's a team, and you really do want to say, okay, how are we doing? One of the things I highly recommend is what we call a family business time. Like whether it's a family meeting, once a week, get together with your wife and just say, hey, how are we doing? That also gives you an opportunity. So throughout the rest of the week, you don't have to pick at each other. Hey, this didn't work for me, or that's not working right. You have a time on whatever, Sunday afternoon after church or whatever. You can say, okay, what was the highlight of your week? What was the low light of your week? How are we doing? That you can check each other instead of waiting till it blows up and now you've got a big problem.
Yeah. So again, sort of from the Baha'i perspective, that would be called consultation, right? Consultation with your wife, consultation with your family, getting together, talking it out. But the principle is absolutely there in the Bible and the Christian scriptures, which would make total sense. So, so how has that changed for you? Because you had a failed relationship, which is when you really started digging into all this. But I understand today you have a successful relationship.
Oh, as a matter of fact, the best. We ended up in divorce, and it took me a good couple of years to get out of my own way. But after I gave it all, including the whole divorce, after I gave that to God and got out of my way, my ex-wife and her husband are two of my best friends. And that doesn't happen under my economy. That only happens when I let it go and say, okay, what's best for everybody, including my kids. So that's it. It's very interesting, and I don't expect anyone else to get that, especially if they're going through a really bad patch, right? If they're going through a separation or divorce. It's too far in the future of, well, that'll never happen. That's much more normal to say, okay, we're going to fight, and how, after she divorced me and took my kids and this and that and everything, okay, I just had to get out of my own way and say, okay, what is really important in this? Well, right now, if you have some folks in your audience that are perhaps going through a separation, one of the most important things you can do is listen to each other. And I'm talking mainly for the guys out there. Listening, actively listening, is much more important than trying to communicate your perspective. That's why even couples therapy, couples counseling, that fails 85% of the time, because you've got two usually unhealthy people trying to get the other person to understand your perspective. And it's a waste of time and money. It's much easier to go in saying, okay, what can I learn from this? I want to learn her perspective. Is that something that I can do anything about? So that's much more important. In fact, I completely agree with Stephen Covey when he says most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply.
Right. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. That's the principle, right? Stephen Covey.
Yeah, that's a great principle.
Yeah.
And I'm the poster child for doing that incorrectly. I don't know how, but for some reason,
it's hard.
I thought it was important to be able to solve her problem as she's telling me her problem, because that means I'm on the ball and I got it, fixed. What a knucklehead.
Yeah.
All that means is I was never 100% listening to her. Right. I wasn't giving her my full attention. My mind was going on how to fix it, right? Which I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys out there can relate.
Yeah. So I appreciate what you were saying about that really dark place where you're not able to, and it's not the right time for somebody else to tell you it'll get better, right? And I think when I was a minister and I was giving sermons, and this was before my own divorce, by the way, I felt it is important to emphasize that there are scriptures where it says God hates divorce, right? So the fact that it's existential to save that relationship is a good thing. And to try to pretend that it's not a feeling of abject failure and hopelessness when it's falling apart would actually be unhealthy. I think it's healthy that when that relationship severs, it feels like the end of the world. I actually think that's a healthy thing. But at the same time, because you should do everything you possibly can to save it. It shouldn't be something you just casually toss in the trash can and say, oh, well, let's find another one, right? You won't get to the kind of deep Wayback Machine soul searching of what should I have done differently without that pain. But it does get better. And again, this is being aired on June 4th, which is the birthday of my daughter, that I wouldn't have had I not gone through that horrible situation and learned enough to basically have, what I would consider a very good relationship. I'm not completely out of the woods today, which is why I'm happy to have you on the show and reinforce some of these principles. When we come back after this next commercial break, we're going to dig again a little bit deeper into a couple of those things. What are the tips and tricks and secrets? What are some of the scriptures that have helped you understand how to have God at the center of your life, as well as putting your partner first? But I also want to talk then about the role of that relationship. It shouldn't be just a selfish thing, right? It should be the building block for the foundation of civilization and society, so that you have a strong loving relationship on which to build in help and service to others, right?
Right.
So when we come back from this next commercial break, we'll dig into some of that. Don't go anywhere. After the short commercial break from one of our sponsors, we'll be right back with more of Randy Pryor and fixing your relationships, or not trying to fix them. We'll be right back.
Something or Other Publishing is offering an extraordinary chance for aspiring authors to showcase their talent. Join our annual short story contest and compete for cash awards and the opportunity to get your writing published. Our contest honors excellence in short story writing with over $5,000 in guaranteed cash prizes and a contract offer to publish the winning stories. But that's not all. Remarkable stories may also be eligible for publication in future Soup anthologies, handpicked by our curators and judges. This is your chance to share your story with the world and be recognized for your talent. Submit your short story today and take the first step towards becoming a published author. From writer to author at Soup. Visit our website to learn more. Your story deserves to be heard.
With Randy Pryor, Created in the Image of God, on June 4th. Right before the break, as we often do, I put my foot in it and I began to use some wrong language. So Randy, help us understand maybe some of the language. What are the tricks and tips and the scriptures and some of the things to do and not do to both keep the relationship from getting on the rocks and maybe trying to repair it if things are not working out so well?
Absolutely. The first thing you want to do is reach out for help. I mean, honestly, was help available during my 14-year marriage? Of course. But I was a knucklehead and I just thought, no, I got this. I can make this. It's not that bad. Okay. If you suspect that something's not happening, it's not, the first thing you want to do is reach out for help. Okay. Now, it's Malachi 2:16 that says, I hate divorce, declares the Lord of Israel. So we know that God is on the side of the marriage. He invented marriage. Okay. So we know he doesn't want divorce. But what we do is panic, right? 99% of us will panic and go, okay, well, how do I stop this? How do I fix this? Okay, if you want to fix this, and this is hard, if you really want to fix this, you got to stop trying to fix this. And where else on this planet does that work? It's kind of like saying, well, just leave it alone. It'll repair itself. No, that's dumb. That's dumb.
It's interesting because your body works that way. I mean, you may have to put some salve on it, but it heals itself. Yeah, you get a cut, it heals itself. You got to take care of the wound, but you're not fixing the wound.
Right. It's not about changing her mind. That's not it at all. If you're going through a separation, right, especially if you're headed for divorce, she's thinking two things. Number one, I can't stand the way it is. Number two, I can't imagine that it will change permanently. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't change and get better. It just means that right now she can't imagine it. And that's based on her personal experience with you, whether it's a year or 30 years. Okay. She's got experience. She knows that you'll say or do whatever it takes to change her mind. Well, that's not going to work because her biggest fear is that you do change, you guys get back together, and things are great for a while. And then they slide right back into how they used to be. That's her biggest fear. So if you're separated, I got some bad news. Your wife is not coming back to you. And I know that sounds harsh, but she's not coming back to you. She may go forward with you, but she's not going backwards. So anytime you suggest counseling or therapy or working on the marriage or even working on yourself, that feels unsafe to her because it represents going backwards, and that's not where she's headed. So that's why it doesn't work. So what does
That's interesting and profound. I mean, I don't know if it's a typical male thing to not sort of see that perspective, but you've just helped me, gain some insight into how the problem is actually structured and why you can't fix it, because she doesn't want it to be fixed. She doesn't want it to go back to the way it was. And the man typically does because he didn't see anything wrong with it.
Exactly.
It was working for him.
Right. Right. I just want what we had. I just want to go back and fix it. Well, in her mind,
you want what we had? Yeah, I want what we had 10 years ago, but that's not what we have had.
Right. Right. What she's got now, what she's facing is, in her mind, irreparable. It's broken. I don't want to fix it. I can't do it anymore. I can't take the chance of doing it anymore. So if you really want to repair this, you have to let go of changing her mind, fixing the problem, working on the issues, and expecting something to change. There is a way through this. That's the great news. The hard news is there's only one way through it, and it's not about trying to change her mind. Want to know what it is? Here's
Yes,
the ticket.
absolutely.
Here's the deal. And I know this seems, kind of odd, almost counterintuitive, but the way this works, and I've got lots of clients that'll back me up on this because they're happily, reconciled and all that kind of stuff. So here's the deal. What does work and is in our control is ourself. So the goal is to become the best version of yourself as humanly possible, right? The man that God made you to be. Okay, that's different than working on the issues, fixing the problem, getting her to change her mind, being a good boy. That doesn't work. It's, in their words, it's unsustainable. You can't keep that up because you're doing all this for her. It's manipulation. If something's wrong and I buy her flowers, she knows that's just, soon to be dead plants. Okay, that's not going to fix it, right? But when we say, okay, I'm going to work on me, 100% focus, 0% focus on the marriage, the issues, trying to change her mind, all of that. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, 14 and a half years, and I have yet to hear any wife say, "Oh, honey, you're right. Thank you for showing me the error of my ways." It's not going to happen, right? So instead, you work on yourself and you let go. You don't ignore her. All that junk about, oh, no contact, I'm just not going to, they'll tell you online that just, ignore her and then she'll miss you and come back. Does that sound like it's from God? No, I'll give you no, it's not from God. That's just a man-made construct, and people think that it doesn't work. It's not about ignoring her. It's about giving her space and not cramping her style and not saying, so how am I doing? Am I doing better? Do you think we can put it back on? Can we get back together again? Oh, slow down. Just take a breath, work on yourself. She will see your improvements. She'll see, they always do. What she does with those, that's between her and God. Okay, so you want one thing, it's very, very clear. You want your wife to be able to imagine that life with you could be better than it's ever been. Not because of words, not because you're explaining things, but because she gets to see it. Because when you start working on yourself over a long period of time and you've got some support and accountability, okay, she'll see it. She will see your changes. And if it's not too late, okay, then things can work out. The way I explain it is, if you'd like your wife to look at you differently, you have to give her something different to look at.
I love it. So we could have you back on and dive deeper into this, and especially if we can find a way. And the reason Randy's not here live is Tuesday nights for you is an ongoing commitment to this kind of a service live in your local area, right? What do you do every Tuesday night? What are you doing while your video virtual self is here talking to me on the show?
Oh, what am I doing right now? Helping guys.
Yeah.
In the support group. Yeah. At that church. I mean, it's local. And if you happen to be there, great. But too many guys came up to me about 4 years ago and they said, we need your help. And they're not anywhere near the church. So I started my own program and I help guys all over the world. I got 2 guys in Australia, 1 guy in Japan, and a whole bunch of guys in the US, because Zoom is a wonderful thing. And that's what we do.
Well, and so you're obviously doing a lot to help whoever you can, wherever they are. But presuming that, let's spend a minute on this, presuming that, the relationship is now working again, or for those who don't have those problems, but, so how should a husband and wife view the less selfish aspect of, serving the greater society and humanity versus just us? Once the relationship is working, what's the point of that relationship?
Yeah, service. It's why we're on the planet. If you can, and this is one of the most important things for a separated husband to do, especially if you're in any pain. Okay, the best way to get out of your own way is to go serve in any capacity. And I would highly recommend like an hour or 2 hours a week, one pretty good sized project, and then 15 minutes a day, every day. And that can be as simple as sending a text to a friend saying, hey, I'm praying for you, or hey, I'm thinking about you, or call your mother, anything. That's all service. That's all. Get out of your own way, put yourself out there and help someone else with pretty much anything you can. And that alone can change your life. And it's why we're here.
Wonderful. Well, I think we've covered, most of what I had hoped to get on the show. There's much more that could be said, and I'm sure you'll get an invitation from us to have you back and go deeper into this. We're going to go to one final commercial break. When we come back, I will try my best to engage with some of the audience comments. Who knows what else I might have up my sleeve by the time this show airs for that final segment. But we're going to go to a last commercial break. We're going to say goodbye to Randy here in a minute, and we'll engage with the audience and figure out who to send a copy of his book to. But Randy, it's been such an honor having you on the show tonight. What are the final words you'd like to leave with our audience based on your experience and your service?
Absolutely. It's never too late. Okay. I've seen guys, I even have one of my clients was divorced for 2 years, blocked on his ex-wife's phone, couldn't contact her at all. And he joined our program and started working on himself. Now they're not only dating, but they're back together again. So it's never too late. You can do this.
So you've had some success stories. Is there one in particular that you just shared one actually, but is there any other, particularly memorable one that you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. I've got tons of them. One guy came to us, his wife was having an open affair, meaning whenever she leave for the weekend, she put it on the family calendar. So he knew that she was going to be gone, and he joined our program. And we just started working on him. And it wasn't about telling her she's doing something wrong or you got to stop, or no, that's crossing the street to her side. Instead, he dove in. He happened to go to all of our Zoom meetings, which is 4 times a week. And he really dove into just becoming the best husband he can, the best man he can, and the best father for I think she was 7 years old at the time. And after about 3 months of work, he was ready. So we gave him what to say, and he confronted his wife, but said, hey, can I run something by you? And she said, yeah, what's up? He said, yeah, this isn't working for me. So I found an apartment. It's not too far away because, of course, I still want to, see our child. And so I'm going to move out, and we're going to take it from there. And she said, hang on. I've been watching you, and I've seen what you're doing, and I really like it. But how do I know that it's going to stay this way? Then he gave her the truth and said, well, I don't like the way I used to be, and I want to be more of God's man. And she said, yeah, I've seen the changes. And he just said, look, that's where I'm headed. That's my direction. And if that works, great. Well, she literally picked up the phone and called the other guy and broke it off, and they reconciled, and they're back together and doing great.
That is an amazing story. You can probably see I've kind of got tears in my eyes listening to that. Very inspiring. The leadership, the servant leadership, the laying down one's own life. I mean, the sacrifice, because which one of us can imagine having that level of taking the high road if we were in the situation? Typical man, you'd be, both from a, mature level, kind of angry, but as a childish reaction, hurt, all these mixed emotions that you would have of being in that situation. I don't know how I could possibly have handled it like that, but sounds like the program was, just a wonderful support for him to get there.
Absolutely. And he told me that he took it to work as well. And he mentioned 2 different guys that worked under him that decided not to kill themselves because of what he learned in the program and passed on to them.
Wow. Well, there you have it. The role of religion in society. How this is like a pebble in the middle of a water. Get right with God. Get right with your relationship to yourself. Work on improving the relationship to your wife, and it's visible to the whole world. It's visible to the outside, and it spreads positive reverberations. Randy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. and record this show today and record this show that we're going to air. Looking forward to hearing more about your work going forward, and hopefully having you back in the future. But thank you for your service, and it's been an honor and a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you, Wade.
We'll be right back after this commercial break. Don't go anywhere.
Overwhelmed by the confusion and chaos of today's world. Politics, the media, and even the environment have become increasingly challenging landscapes to navigate. We're living in a narrative that began 4 decades ago, and now we're reaching its climax. What the hell is going on is here to provide clarity and perspective. Don't get triggered by another tweet or misled by clickbait ads. Gain a deeper understanding and grasp the broader picture. Understanding is powerful. When we comprehend the news in context, we can see through the sensationalism and misinformation. Get insight and clarity by discovering what the hell is going on post-COVID. Cowan's insightful and well-researched work will help you navigate the complexities of today's world. Order your copy today.
Well, welcome back, everyone. It's just me here in the studio with my daughter's cat, Coconut. So I hope you enjoyed that show with Randy Pryor. All we have left to do is review a couple of the comments and figure out who deserves to obtain access to Randy's program. So there were many great comments. I don't know that I actually can pick one. I may just share some here and then invite anyone watching this to email us. Here's one from TMP 2024. My dad used to say money isn't everything, it's the only thing. So that person relates to what used to be the case in the good old 50s here in America. Others felt it's sad that Serene, women today are even worse. Lots of self-entitlement. I'm thankful that I'm thankful for what I have. So thank you so much, Serene, for sharing that. Both sides of the equation have things to improve. Tonight's focus was on the men. Here's another insightful comment from TMP 2024. We often internalize traditional gender roles, which can lead to feelings of guilt, shame, or inadequacy when not meeting financial expectations. I know I feel guilty when I fall short. And I can absolutely relate to this in that the changing landscape, the changing world requires so much more from us and requires different things from us than our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers or great-grandmothers. And there's been a lot of talk about, super women thinking they need to do it all, and when they transitioned into the working world and whatnot. But this applies equally to men. It is hard to meet expectations of everybody else, and ultimately it's the couple and their expectations of each other and their needs for each other that matter, not any defined norms of society. Great comment here from Shelley Humbles too. Sounds like a good idea from everyone to try to write down and pass on the lessons to their kids or others. So there were many great comments across the platforms here, which I greatly appreciate. I don't really know which one to and also here's a good one too from Serene. You must be married. I'm not sure if that was for me, for Randy, or for someone else in the audience. Perhaps it was for this person. OHZ fan, listening is key. So in any case, what I think we're going to do here is we're going to invite people to send your comments to info@soupllc.com. And I'm putting it in the chat right there. And we'll also go ahead and show it on the screen. Go ahead and send your comments to us after the fact, those of you who are viewing the show. So we'll open up this program to others as well as to those who were viewing this. And I'll get with Randy and see, which or any of the comments that we shared on the screen he would like to award the program to. One more here from Vincent. That's really a wise statement. Most people don't think that way. And from Telluride, wait, this is the one I was wanting to show. It doesn't work because it's man-made. We tend to screw things up without God. And the comment from Quiet Poet, amen. So anyway, there you have it. We will figure out who deserves to get free access to Randy's program. All that remains for me to do as we wrap up on time, can you believe it, on time, not going a half an hour late tonight, is to share with you who's going to be on episode 102 next week, June 11th, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Central, for Created in the Image of God. And that is Payam Zamani. Payam Zamani is the author of a new book, Crossing the Desert. And in his forthcoming book, Payam shares his deeply personal experiences, including his harrowing escape from Iran at the age of 16 and the founding of a company which went public to the tune of $1.2 billion. He also talks about how this company was built on the principles of spiritual capitalism. And throughout his journey, Payam learned many lessons which were viewed through the experiences of his faith, which is why we're interested in that topic on Created in the Image of God. So very excited to have Payam on the show next week to share the tragedy and the triumph of his escape from Iran and his success in America. You don't want to miss that one. 8 p.m. Central Time, Tuesday night, next week, June 11th. Until then, everyone, may God be with you.